Welcome to Virtuous Society. I'm your host, Itamar, here to learn from experts and great minds about all things community and beyond. Today we have Ronen, the co-founder and CEO of Game7, an on-chain gaming ecosystem where both players and developers win. Ronen is also the host of GameSpot, a podcast where he interviews entrepreneurs in the Web3 gaming space about their journey and challenges. Game7 is revolutionizing the Web3 gaming world, and I'm excited to have Ronen here to tell us all about it. I want to thank Ronen again for joining us. Enjoy the episode. Hey Ronen, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, glad to be here. What's going on, Itamar?
Going well. How about you?
Good. How's life? How's everything? It's been
Challenging
a couple
and
of
busy.
days.
Yeah,
Challenging. Life is
that's for sure.
full of opportunities and challenges for sure.
Yeah, that's for sure. And I
yeah.
think everything is kind of hectic now. We have a very special guest here today, and that's Ronen. He is the CEO of Game7 and my boss, pretty much. So I should read this one carefully, I guess.
A partner.
Partner. Co-contributor. That's the thing. So I want to dive straight into it, and first and foremost, just ask, what is Game7 and why does it matter?
Game7, what we're doing is we're building a digital nation for gamers on chain. And what we want to prove is that a digital nation for gamers that's powered by a transparent financial system can enable new economic opportunities for all of us globally, regardless of our physical location, our level of education, or our social class. And I'll tell you why it's important and why we started it is because I firmly believe that humanity deserves a better financial system that is more transparent, more inclusive, and one that provides a true financial freedom of choice for all of us. And I've been in countries that went to austerity. I have family in countries that are being defaulted. And I've seen what happens where governments and banks really mismanage their own population, right? And that's a big reason that I joined the crypto space back in 2016. And since then, I've been building multiple ventures in the space. I raised and I invested more than $100 million in the space as well. And, for me, I think the technology is really ready right now for kind of the next level of mass adoption. And gaming, obviously has been a passion. But I think now it's really more than that. It's really a tool to onboard more than half of the world's population into a better financial system that's built entirely on chain. And if you look at games today, Fortnite, some of the big ones, obviously, they have user bases that are larger than entire countries, right? 100 million is more than probably where me and you live, right? They have a lot of what I call citizen, because what it is almost like a digital nation of its own. But the problem is that it's closed and it's tightly controlled by a single entity, by a company, right? Which I think it would limit the opportunity, the potential for these new creative opportunities for people. It will not onboard population and humanity to a better financial system, which I think will create this prosperity. And specifically in the gaming industry, I think the gaming industry is an inflection point today, where there's a massive growth over the last decade. Mobile games really brought new users to the space. But we kind of painted ourselves in a corner where players and developers and the publishers are just not aligned anymore, right? They're being bound by, developers are bound by sort of introducing certain mechanics that asks, players to keep spending in order to have fun, right? And developers are they don't have a choice, right? Because they're bound by centralized monopolies like distribution that basically force them to create those very extractive business models, right? So I think the industry is really seeking a new model that realigns players and developers to kind of co-create together again, to benefit together from the creation, and really remove a lot of the reliance on these monopolies that extract the most value but not really redistribute it to the people and the creators that are creating that industry successful. So for me, why it's important is because I think what we're trying to do is we're trying to invert that model and to put the value that's being created in the industry in the hands of the people that are creating it, rather than by, a centralized monopolies that will keep owning top 90% of the industry is just controlled by the top 1%, right? And I think the redistribution of wealth in the gaming industry and redistribution of opportunities and creative opportunities, not just financial opportunities, is something that the industry needs. And this is what we're trying to create here. We're trying to basically demonstrate that we can achieve this maybe on a smaller scale initially to prove that that model actually works. And eventually we want to be much more than that, right? If you think about the future of nations is digital, right? Like it's pretty obvious that the world's moving digital. Everything's moving digital. My kid who is couple year old, born with Bitcoin and Ethereum, like exists his whole life. This is not going to be weird when you tell them, hey, there's like digital money and digital currencies, and like, yeah, you don't have to take a check to the bank and deposit it and be like, what is this like paper thing that says that this is worth something? Like, why is it worth anything, right? So like all these concepts plus, obviously gaming is a big part of, we all gamers, and gaming is very accustomed to digital economies. So I do think that's really important for us, for what we're building, to mainly to bring new people into a better financial system, but really using games as the first use case, which is the most obvious one and has a clearly like a deep need in the industry to be reinvented. So that's why we're doing it.
That's amazing. And I think we have a lot of Game7 citizens that are tuning in to this episode and will tune in to GameSpot, which should be live when this episode is live as well. So check it out as well if you want to hear more from Ronen. But they would be probably interested to know what is your role within Game7. Like, what is it that you are owning with this entire team and everything that we are building, and how are you kind of steering the ship?
Yeah, I mean, I would say like the steer is supposed to be shipped by the citizens, right? I mean, I think with any initial community or a big kind of project like that, and with a big vision, you need someone to coordinate, bring the right people, and make sure that, to build the ship. But then really the goal is that you let the ship sail and take a life on its own, right? And I've done that multiple times in my life where I started an idea, I brought the team together, I brought people that are better than me in doing what they're supposed to be, like what their expertise in. And I let them basically like build that ship together, and then sell it, right? So I think my role is, I mean, some depends on like, who you ask, like, as a core janitor, or I mean, I don't really like the term CEO, because I think like, a nation doesn't have a CEO, right? It is like a founding fathers. And I think like I'm one of the founding fathers together with all of us here. The team of almost 100 people that kind of initially help us bootstrap the initiative. We have over 40,000 citizens now that are basically going to take reins on what we're going to do next, right? And I think that's kind of important to put in perspective, that I'm here to steer things early on. Obviously, there's a lot of like strategic decisions that just have to happen early on, and then kind of decisions on, directionally, and like how do we maintain a brand? How do we make sure that the community is always heard? How do we maintain the authenticity and the culture and the values, right? So that's where I see my role is. I think obviously because I'm seeing a lot of the pieces, like I have like a 20,000 feet view on kind of everything that's happening. I'm able to always like jump in and either answer questions or clarify things, making sure that, when we build the ship, right, we don't leave any cracks, right? Because if we leave cracks, we're gonna sink. And I think the goal for us is that this ship doesn't sink, and then from that ship there's gonna be a lot of more ships that are being built by the citizens to then carry us to like the next level, right? I feel like that'll be my role. Obviously, on a day-to-day, I'm spending a lot of time, working with people, making sure everybody's happy, making sure everybody's heard, and a lot of strategic stuff, partnerships. I think from a gaming nation perspective, a core piece is obviously going to be content and having fun, right? Like while we have the reputation of the citizen, how we contribute, and ensuring that for every steps that we take and any contribution that we make, we're probably rewarded for the contribution. Besides that, eventually we're all about playing games. We're all about like having fun, creating social bonds, and hopefully meeting new people here that then can help us get to our next stage in life. So there's a lot of stuff that basically I'm trying to create through partnerships, through relationships, through bringing people that can support us to make that a reality. So yeah.
So I think that in terms of the value Game7 offers, like players and citizens, it feels more clear now than ever. And it's simple as play games, get rewards, which get turned
I
into
think that's
our second slogan.
I think that's like the simple way, right? Because I feel like over time, the concept of being a nation, it's a new category, right? If you ask someone, hey, would you want to have a stake in the U.S. before it was born, or before it was created, before it was funded, right? If I can tell you, hey, you can put money and get the entire upside of the U.S. once it succeeds, right? Like, I think it's like there hasn't been many like examples in the past that something that happened, because most of these situations are like it's very land basis, right? It's never been like digital. So like, yeah, you can buy land and the land appreciate, right? But like here, there's like another kind of metric that like you can actually have a stake in the growth of that nation if you believe that nation can create a lot of value, right? And a lot of the value is basically created by the citizen. So by contributing, by playing games, that's how the value is created. And yeah, if you create the value, you'll be rewarded for that. So the play games get rewarded is obviously like a simple way to explain it. But I think there's like much more than that, much deeper meaning. And I think it's not just for players. I think it's also for developers, right? And like with every nation, as you start, like you need the infrastructure to be able to succeed, right? If you don't have roads, then and you don't have electricity, then you don't have the basic foundations to prosper, to create life, right? Or to create opportunities, to create businesses, right? The financial system, a governance system, like all of these things like kind of required. And I think that's basically what Game7 has been building over the last 3 years since inception, is like really building the foundation so that developers can come in and build games that succeed, right? So we're providing all this like public utility to not just like build your game, go to market, but like the infrastructure to really monetize it. And then on the other end is like, yeah, we have reputable gamers, people that like truly contributed to games, right? There's not, no bots and things like that, which obviously I'm not saying bots are bad, bots are humans too, but like we really want real players, right? Like that's our mission, right? We want to bring real people to a better financial system. So it has to be real people that this benefits, right? So we build an infrastructure. We're allowing just games to go to market like faster, but then we also bring the citizen and the audience that allows them to then play the game, experiment with it, right? Like play it. Eventually, yes, like spending as well, right? Which I think that's a core loop that eventually, nothing, and game developers are never going to make money if the game is entirely free, right? There needs to be a model, right? Like we have to be realistic as well and pragmatic. So like while we are building a new category in a sense that like you get an upside of the entire piece of all the value that's ever going to be created here. It's like almost like, there's one in like investing in the US or any like emerging countries, or the other way is like imagine if you invested in Blizzard, right? And then like for all the success that they created and they got sold, then you get a piece just by not even investing in Blizzard, but just by playing all the games for the last 20 years. And when they sold for $69 billion to Microsoft, you would get a piece of that pie because you're the one that played it. You're the one that spent money in the game. You're the one that brought your friends to create the social engagement in the game. Like you were the value. You created the value, right? At the end of the day, I see games as softwares, right? It's just a piece of software. So if like there's no players, there's no value to the software. It's like any product really in a space, right? But we haven't really paid a lot of attention to how players participate in the upside of the success of games. I think like until now it's been very much like entertainment based, which I think is awesome, right? Like entertainment is like it's a big industry, and like we all have to laugh and to socialize and to have fun, right? I think that's like a big part of life, and I think what that's game introduced to us, or maybe some people also got really addicted to playing games, and that's a different problem. But like, but how do we actually share the upside with the people that are creating the value, which is are the gamers at the end of the day? So I think like that's kind of how we're trying to align the incentives. Like we basically removing the middleman from like distribution. The value goes directly to the people that are creating it, which is obviously the developers and the players. And we do that in a fun way. And then we have like multiple levels of like, okay, like how do we go and ensure that has a self-sustaining like model, right? So like from our model point of, from like economic model point of view, we have the DAO treasury. The DAO treasury is entirely controlled by citizens, which should make decisions that are pro gaming and pro economy, right? Meaning like it has to be a net a plus EV basically decisions that like we should always spend less than we're making back into the economy, right? Because otherwise we're basically gonna be like a lot of failing economies, right? The government is spending way more money than making, right? So that's like some of the pieces, some of the pieces that we're providing, that we're creating, and where we see that goes. I do say like it's that vision is like 20-year vision, right? And we're here to stay. And I think in the early days, it's really important for us to just have a very strong community who believe in this, and the way that we're thinking about obviously incentive design and things like that. It's like it's really if you believe in this future, if you want to be successful in the gaming space in the next 20 years, and you believe that Game7 can help you become successful, then we want you to have a skin in the game, and we want you to also show that you're committed long term. And if you are committed long term, then we assure you that you'll have the upside and you'll be successful here.
Nice. I think that everything that you're saying now, which is interesting, it's kind of the same things that you told me pretty much 2 years ago when we first met. I was back then working on my own thing, my own weird on-chain game, trying to make it.
How weird. It's you worked on your own, you worked on learning something new, right? And I think, I remember when we talked about it. I said, listen, at the end of the day, whether it succeeds or not, you're going to learn something, right? And I think like that's how I see entrepreneurship, right? I think every entrepreneur has like, I said it in like some other places, but every entrepreneur has a success ratio, right? Like you never always succeed, but like the more you try, the more you succeed. So whether it's 1 out of 4, 2 out of 7, like you just have to continue and try new things, and eventually it's gonna hit. It's as long as you're improving and learning from the mistakes that you made previously, right? So
exactly. And I think that the pitch now is being somewhat kind of simplified, and now it's kind of more clear because the products are already there. Like Hyperplay is there, Summon is there, Market Wars is coming soon. So we have a lot of things that are getting there. So I think now the picture is more clear, but that was something that always interests me, because the minute that me and you kind of talked about the space when we first met up, I actually talked with you kind of in the head of a possible angel investor for what was Atomic State, and then later on just joined you. And I think that's something that I always kind of wanted to ask you. What has really inspired you to go that route and to co-found Game7, and what was your background from the gaming side entering this market?
Yeah, so what inspired me, I mentioned earlier in the beginning, right? Like I've had to experience, like, first of all, I had to experience, what does it feel like being in a place where, you go down the street and everybody is waiting in line in ATMs because there's basically a capital control, right? So like imagine you live in a country and you have whatever 50K in your bank because you worked like 40 years of your life from the age of 20 until 60. You work and you saved $50,000, right? And you put it in the bank. And then all of a sudden one day you wake up and you like go to the bank. It's like, oh, sorry, you can only take $50 per day from that ATM to use, right? Because we can't allow you to take more than that, right? And I think like that was like an eye-opening moment for me about the role of banks and the role of governments, right? I was still pretty early. I was like my early 20s, so I didn't have a lot of money there, but I just looked around, and for me, I think what's interesting is like it wasn't my country, but I was visiting another country. It's like because I had money like in a different bank, like abroad, I could actually withdraw as much as I wanted, right? Like so, it was like a weird metrics moment that you're like, what the hell is going on here, right? So I think like that was one of the big things that kind of ignited me to get into crypto and understand the value that crypto can provide to humanity. I think the other piece was that I was reading about Cyprus, which is not too far where I was born, where I was born, and I saw how the government completely failed, and the entire population got a 10% haircut on their bank accounts just because the government really failed. So it's like a lot of these things that's kind of like the multiple dots that I start connecting throughout life. Obviously, when I search crypto and Bitcoin, like it was immediately clicked right for me. And over the last 10 years, I've been just trying to figure out, well, how do I get my neighbor to use crypto and to accept crypto and to work with crypto or to believe what I'm telling them, right? That this is the future. And it really comes down to mass adoption, right? So before crypto, I was doing currency trading right after I finished the military service. I got into currency trading, did that for about 6 months, I would say. Then found myself into online advertising, and that was like an early mobile. So like even mobile ads was pretty early, and like I was there for about 2-3 years. I was like 3 years almost, and that's where like online mobile ads and then online like gaming ads start basically taking shape. That was like the early mobile time. So obviously, being in the world and, growing up with a computer from day one, from not day one, but maybe from the age of like 9 or something, right? My dad always made sure that we have the latest technology in the house because he was working in tech. So I was always exposed to gaming. I loved playing games as a young age when I had a lot of time on my hands. Both like physical games, but also like online games. I remember like not even Doom, but there was like this Axe. You remember this Axe guy? I forgot what it's called now. But anyways, like so I go back and so like all these pieces start connecting over time, right? Like I saw, mobile basically bring, half the world's population into games, right? Mobile ads take off. I was very involved in a bunch of like working with like early game developers in the mobile ad space. And then when crypto came and everything that when I got into crypto, initially it wasn't really about gaming because I felt like it's a bit too early, right? I remember in 2016 and 17, during the first ICO boom, I was at UC Berkeley and we built a massive community around like a blockchain. It's called Blockchain in Berkeley, which still goes today. And in 2016 and 17, I remember just trying to explain people like what is blockchain and what is crypto. And like, we're talking to like, companies like Microsoft and Airbus and Qualcomm and BMW. And we've done actually a lot of education because that was our full time. Like we went to school, but our team, it was like 300 members total, but I would say like core 25, I would say. Like we skipped classes. Like we didn't even go to classes. We were just like all day reading papers, talking about blockchain, like researching it. It was like a very fun moment in my life that I got so educated about the space super fast, right? Which has a steep learning curve. And then we end up just like telling people from Deloitte and like all this like massive, conglomerate, like this is what it means. And they're like, no, it doesn't mean that. And we're sitting on the panels with them. It's like, you guys are like you guys are out of touch. Like you actually don't understand how this thing works. And you're advising businesses to do things that makes like no freaking sense, right? So it's like all of this thing kind of led me to like, basically reaching the point that after school, I started the fund. We raised $25 million to invest in privacy preserving technologies like zero knowledge proof startups back in 2018. So pretty early, not wrong. I think now we finally seeing the fruits of it, but then so I done a few stuff, and then eventually I started working in a gaming company called Forte, because I saw that, the technology have been around for the last 6-7 years. We're obviously seeing a lot of different use cases coming to market. I start seeing my average normie friends, right? Like asking me about crypto. Like back in 2017, it wasn't so much, but like definitely like 2021, that's where a lot of them start. So I realized, okay, like the market is getting there. Like mass adoption is getting there, but I knew the technology is still pretty like early, right? blockchain was too expensive, like transaction fees too expensive, like onboarding was very hard, like managing wallets, so the whole thing was like super cumbersome, right? And about like 2021, I realized that, okay, it's probably in the next 3 years, all of these challenges are going to be abstracted away, and we'll be able to actually build real, just like consumer apps. And obviously, I think gaming is like the best consumer app for Web3 and get to bring mass adoption, because half the world's population is playing games. So like they're already used to it, right? You just need to provide them that in a way that they would like to, they will accept it, and also that they can consume it without worrying about all the complexity, right? So basically, that to a point that I said, okay, I think it's the right time. I think there's a few companies that started a bit earlier than that, which Immutable and I think Engine back in the day. I think like when they started, obviously it was never a bad time. It just obviously took longer to materialize, but some of them succeeded, some of them not. But anyways, I thought like 2021 was just a good time to start, because it'll take about 4 to 3 years, 5 years. I think we're still working through it. Yeah, we're getting there. We're very close. Yeah. So that's kind of why we started Game7, and kind of going back to the whole story.
Nice.
Yeah, I hope that answered the question. Yeah.
It does. It did. So in terms of like Game7 was pretty much established in 2021. What would you say are the biggest challenge you had to face during that time? Obviously, both bear and bull. I'm not sure like how do we frame the recent run, but let's call it a bull.
The biggest challenges.
You can pick one, up to you.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's many. I mean, I think as an on individual basis, I think it's the uncertainty, right? You have conviction, you believe this is the future. I mean, it worked for me in the past, right? I've been pitching crypto since 2016 to all my friends, and nobody believed me, nobody trusted. Everybody said you're just a bit crazy, and let us know when you go bankrupt and we'll get you a job, right? So it's like, it worked for me in the past that, okay, I have conviction, I believe in a certain direction. I usually look at like trends, like just macro trends, and say like, if we're like directionally correct on the trend, then we can make a lot of mistakes on the way and still succeed, right? So for me, it's like, you never know, right? Until you actually get there, you don't know. You can, like Steve Jobs said, you can only connect the dots looking backward. So I think the biggest challenge for me individually is just uncertainty, and I think it's probably for every entrepreneur in the space. I think the other big challenge is obviously getting a really good community, right? Because like, you can't buy a community, you can't really bootstrap a community and expect things to work. You actually have to do a lot of the manual work, a lot of like one-on-ones, talking to people, getting to know people on a personal level, creating social experiences and activities for them. Like it takes a lot of time, and there's no way to scale it, right? So I think like obviously early on we got a really good group of game developers. They were very engaged. I think over time, when the market went down, a lot of these game developers disappeared because they didn't see the future in Web3 gaming anymore. So like, while we started a very alive and vibrant community, like from like the first 2 or 3 months, all of a sudden the community disappeared because Web3 gaming is not hot anymore. There's a bear market, and they're like, okay, like we're going to move back to Web2 because that's what we know, right? So I think like that was like a hard moment, and try to figure out, okay, so how do we bring people back? Like what is the things that can actually, what we can rally people around that can help us achieve the goals that we want? Because from our perspective, like I said in the beginning, like I'm planning to be here, but I'm not planning to lead the ship over the next couple of years, right? Like I want really the community and the people that are coming in today and bringing value and contributing and are inspired by building a better future for themselves, to leverage what we've built so far to then get them to the next stage in life, right? And the reason I'm saying that, and really what's important to me, is because I'm the best example of it, right? Like 3 times in my life, I started working for a company that eventually helped me start my next business, right? And sometimes it was a company, sometimes just like it was a community, right? Like we built a community in Berkeley, and before I graduated, I had my first business. with the people that I met in that community, right? And so it's like, I am a big believer in communities. I'm a big believer in enabling other people to make a better future for themselves, right? Like I actually get a lot of joy from seeing someone that was in our community and all of a sudden, started a business or got a really good job or all of a sudden made a lot of money because they heard about something. Like I love to see that. Like this is something that gives me a ton of joy. And what I'm trying to figure out is how do I scale it to like 1 million people, right? Like how do we get 1 million people to get extremely wealthy from the work that we're doing here? And I know that obviously by doing the hard work early on, like we're all gonna succeed as part of it. But for me, it's like really important. So that's been some of the challenges. There's always ups and downs in a community. I think since obviously you joined and you kind of took a reign on talking to the community, listening to them, being more on the pulse. I think we're really seeing a much better and like much more loyal community members that I know they're gonna stay regardless of what's gonna happen, right? And I think like I think what's a lot of like Web3 communities are missing. When you start with an NFT sale or a token sale, obviously you get a lot of the hype and attention early on, but the community is very much influenced by what happens to the price, right? But I think if you start a community that literally our community did not accept any token drop, they didn't accept any NFTs, they didn't accept nothing. It was purely about we believe there's a better future for gaming and we want to make it happen because we cannot do it alone and it's much easier to do it as a collective, right? And you see that over and over in the past that it's much easier to make a massive impact if you have a common group working together towards a common vision, right? So so I think like for us, I expect the community to stay. Obviously, there's going to be up and downs, like any community. When there's a monetary aspect get involved, right, in a community, it does change a lot of dynamics, and I've seen that in the past in our in Berkeley, right? Like we made like I think almost $1 million just from like consulting services while we're like all students, right? And there was a big question: is okay, like should we be making money? Like should we take salaries? Should we not? Who should take salaries? Like all of this, like when you start talking about money, it's always create a lot of friction and a lot of new kind of dynamics to the community. And but I think like it's a part of any nation, right? There's always gonna be in part of the economy, like there has to be money. Money is, I won't say money is everything, but like it's a very important piece to enable the kind of flywheel that you want to create in what you want to do, right? So it's a means to an end, but it's a core tool to succeed in and see through the division that we want to reach, right? So it's like, so I think like that's challenge that we experience, and that's probably challenges that we will experience, right, in the near future. But I'm super solid about our community, and I know that at least the core people are going to stay in the great times, in the bad times, because they know that we're all working towards the future, and there's always going to be short-term bumps on the road, but we're all going to work through it.
Yeah, and I think as well, like from at least from my perspective, you're pretty much enabling me, you and the rest of the team are enabling me to enable the community. So we have community members who are more interested in contributing in various ways. And from pretty much, I would say a year ago now, what I kind of the idea that I had in mind is to enable the community to do as much as possible and to delegate to the community, because eventually this is where we want to get to. So why not just start and see how it plays out? And it was bumpy. Like we all know it was bumpy. We tried to let people come up with their own initiative and take it on. And we tried a lot of different stuff that didn't work until we found something that did. And now we're trying to scale it up. And we're seeing more and more people take more and more initiative. Shout out to Naroda Pilot and KT and Alok and tons of others that are now participating pretty much daily and are part of the team. They are not necessarily core team members, but they are part of Game7. And their value is being compensated, but it also being facilitated and enabled. And I think that's that's huge because there isn't really a team in Web3 that took that risk, from my perspective. Something that is very unique to us, which I'm very proud of, and I'm very excited to the future of it. So that's great as well. On top of all the gamers that we have provide value at their own leisure. Now we don't have a lot of time, so I wanted to kind of dive a bit deeper to kind of the role of community. So we kind of talked about it briefly, but you mentioned having those core community members. How do you facilitate, or how do you think we should facilitate those deeper connections between not just us and them, but them between themselves?
I mean, I think there's not really shortcuts. You have to know them on a personal level. You have to know what they care about. You have to understand where they're coming from. What's their, where do they live? Like, what's their life like? What are they doing? Like, what do they want to achieve in life, right? And then as a community leader, if that's the question, you have to find opportunities for them based on kind of what they're thriving. It's very much, I mean, it's similar if you're, running a company, right? Like you hire an employee, but there's no employee that just want to do the same thing for the rest of their life, especially not in our space, right? Especially not people who are like young and ambitious and like, want to take over the world, right? You always want to do bigger things. Exactly. You want to do bigger things every time as if you're a motivated person. And then as a manager, for example, then you try to figure out what is the career growth for that person. What can I introduce them to? What opportunities can I give them so then they can constantly grow and eventually be able to do the things that they want to do on their own, right? So I think like there's not really a way to shortcut. I think it comes down to, yes, you have to have one-on-one calls. You have to understand who are the people that are involved, get to know them on a personal level as well. I think like that's extremely important because that gives a really like a connection that you can't get just by being online, right? And I think in this day and age, I know that John is talking about it a lot, but like, what I call like social media, I think it's really like anti-social media, right? Because we become less social and we have less friends. It's like statistically shown that like people have less friends, like good friends, than they used to have in the past, right? So like technology actually make us more siloed and have less friends. So it's like I think a community role, not just community leader role, but the community role is to create social bonds that bring that back and just open opportunity for us, right? It's kind of two things, right? Like being social, being humane, creating fun place to be and like meet new people, right? Like I can't even tell you how many times I met random people from communities that either started or communities I joined that like we end up becoming like really good friends that, yeah, while we're not working in the same industry, we still have a lot in common, right? And like I know that these people are people that are eventually going to do something with in the future, whether it's going on vacation with because, hey, we have a really good time vacationing together, or that I'm going to start a business with, or maybe I'm going to hire them because the time is going to provide that opportunity, even though they're super great in what they do and they'll never get hired by anyone else, right? But because they know me and because we have a relationship, because we met each other without without an incentive, I think that's a big part. Like in a community, like there's a concept of like we're just here for the same goal, right? It's not like a business world where you like, what did I get from you? What can you give me, right? The community is more like, hey, we're both passionate about something and we definitely align on that, right? And so there's no like really this like business tension, right? And I think like you see that also a lot in like schools, right? And like education and like universities. It's like it's a really good place to like just meet people like with diverse background from all and just create bonds, right? So I think like as a community, you just need to create those bonds and like social experiences, like other people meet each other, and eventually, I think these people will find a path to then build something together. And like then when they do come up with opportunity to build something together after meeting in your community, then you should be the person that gives them as much support as possible to actually see that through. right? Because it doesn't take a lot to create that flywheel, right? You need like a couple of like stories, a couple of use cases of someone that literally came out of nowhere, sitting in some like random countries on the computer, and literally became someone in this community. And I think like Game7 is basically built in a merit base. It's a merit based system, right? Like we don't care where you're from, we don't care what you study, we don't care how old you are, besides a few pieces that we kind of have to for regulatory reasons, but like we don't really care, right? Like if you want to contribute, if you want to create content, if you want to facilitate activities, if you want to come and play games, if you like, it's really, we don't care who you are. Like, and here you actually can earn your reputation regardless of who you are, right? There's no prejudice. Like we don't know anything, right? Like you coming in and you start from the same place that all of us started. Like even me, like if you look at the portal, like I'm not even that high because like I don't have as much time to spend. And like and like the people, yeah, like think about it, like the people that are actually engaged and like build a reputation and do all these activities will be the ones that are gonna run the show like in the coming years, right? So it's like, it's about like intentional for me, like, you know, to kind of give the opportunity for other people to step up and to know that, yeah, if you continue to contribute, that's the future. Like you'll have a say in what's happening here. But yeah, but you have to contribute. And if you're new and you've never, and you just learn about Game7, that doesn't stop you from getting there too, right? So the opportunity remain the same for anyone that's coming in at any given time. And yeah, I think that's kind of what community is about, right?
Nice. And that's what the Game7 community is about. And I think that just to round this off, this entire conversation, we will probably have another one, I suspect, in a couple of months, once we have some storms to go through before that. But after that, we will probably link up again and discuss some of the other stuff that I wanted to get to, but we didn't have the chance. Today, what would you say if you would start all over again? What's the one thing that you would do differently?
It's a good question because, you know, it's like you actually never know how things would have worked out if you did something different, right?
Exactly.
And
Gets you thinking.
Yeah, and honestly, I also am not the type of person that look in the past and try to be like, oh, what? I mean, I'll go to the past and be like, okay, what can I learn that I can do better the next time? But I'm like not looking back to kind of look at like what didn't go well and like kind of try to draw on it, right? Like I feel like we can only change the future, we can't change the past. And I think the present is freaking awesome. Like I'm really excited about, you know, waking up every day, about working with the people, about getting to know the community, about seeing the opportunity that coming to us and kind of distribute the opportunity to other people. So it's like, honestly, I wouldn't do anything different. If I started all over again, I probably do the same thing, right? Like start a community by finding the key challenges that whatever your industry is trying to solve, get those early community members and contributors to start building things and kind of put it in the market and let that evolve, right? And I think like that's the best way to bootstrap a community, and that will eventually will create a lot of different businesses around that community. So I think everything we wanted to do until now, we basically deliver on. I think there are certain things maybe that we haven't spent as much attention or prioritized as much because, you know, there's always the chicken and egg problem that you have to solve for to kind of get to the next stage. But I don't know, I'm super blessed to be here. I'm super excited to be here. I enjoy every day. So I wouldn't change anything.
Nice. Amazing. That's a perfect answer. So I want to thank you very much for being here. As I said, we'll probably have you again in a few months' time. But if you want to hear more from Ronen, check out GameSpot. I'm pretty sure that I'll have the link in the description for the show. This is where Ronen just interviews other CEOs, co-founders, kind of sharing the entrepreneurial journey in Web3 gaming and beyond. Hopefully, I'm not sure what's the plans for the future. I'll let you handle it.
Yeah, I mean the future is unknown, right? And that's why it's exciting. If you knew what's gonna happen in the future, it wouldn't be as interesting. Life wouldn't be as interesting. But yeah, I mean, I think that for GameSpot, like if you guys are joining GameSpot, for me, it's I've been an entrepreneur for since the age of like 14, and I always learned from other people. I think it's really important to kind of see what other people are doing, learn from their mistakes, and try to like collaborate with people within the same industry, so like and share that information. And I think that's especially in our space, the industry is still nascent. I think the pond is pretty small, and we all need to come together to basically prove that we can grow that pond, and then yeah, maybe we can compete with each other, but until then it really doesn't make any sense. So I think like growing together as a community, learning from each other has been something that I've done my whole life, whether it's from my mentors or other business partners and things like that. So the podcast is really as a way for me to learn what other people are doing, to kind of share what worked for us, what didn't work for us, what lesson we learn, what and what are the philosophies that kind of keep us motivated and keep us alive every day to wake up and smile to the cameras when we lead our teams. So yeah, that's what it's about, and hopefully it provides a lot of insights on how all of you can succeed in the Web3 gaming space.
It does. It very much does. I had a sneak peek into the first couple of episodes, so I already know what you guys are going to get, and it's awesome. So I would encourage you to check it out. I will also encourage you to check Ronen on Twitter. I'll put all of the links in the description. Also check out app.game7.io for really much everything, like loot drop and just quests and just like fun stuff. Everything is there. Nice. So thank you very much, Ronen. Pleasure having you here, and we'll catch you in the next one.